microphone.
Well, good afternoon, dear friends, and a very special welcome to our wonderful Wednesday lunchtime meeting. A very special welcome to those who are in our audience today. Sheila, we have professional historians here, we have enthusiastic amateurs and visitors as well. Special welcome on behalf of our acting president, Matthew Rowe, here today, and other councillors who are here today to this very special building. As many of you know, it's Brisbane's oldest and Queensland's most precious building. All of us delight in these Wednesday lectures, and could I just ask everybody if you would just turn off or put your mobile phones on silent just at this moment. And by way of introduction, of course, one of the most proud and perhaps most significant service institutions in Australia is the Country Women's Association of Australia. And we're very privileged today to hear about the CWA, a much loved institution. We'll hear today about its foundation in August 1922, its role in the Depression years when our colleagues on the CWA did so much to provide food and clothing for destitute families, and of course, everything that's happened since that time. And we know the wonderful support the CWA gives, a home from home for our country colleagues, even in small regional towns. And we know of the wonderful support in scholarships as well, many other things the CWA is going to tell us as part of the CWA history. We're privileged today to have the 31st president of the CWA with us, Mrs. Sheila Campbell. Sheila's from Jandowae, very experienced in the world of CWA, and looking forward so much to that presentation.
Thank you, John. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you. I acknowledge the Jagera people and the Turrbal people, the Aboriginal owners of the land where we gather today, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I also thank the Royal Historical Society of Queensland for this opportunity to talk about the Queensland Country Women's Association. And if I do go overboard, just tell me and I'll stop. As we approach our 100th annual general meeting to be held in Toowoomba, commencing on the 30th of November 2023, I would like to present the following PowerPoint put together by our archives team in 2022. This is Sir Matthew Nathan. However, the claim that QCWA had been initiated by a man would be a disservice to the early women of Queensland. Women had been meeting and forming community organisations from the start of settlement in Queensland, and that's not counting the Indigenous women whose sacred women's law has been enacted on this land for thousands of years before us. The history of women's activities is often overlooked. Pioneer women were organising to support each other in the harsh male-dominated frontier conditions and to address conditions for working women in the cities and towns. This next one is Monday morning, Friday day. They knew all too well the exacting nature of women's unpaid domestic work in the colonial society, such as this painting by artist Vida Leigh depicts. The women formed organisations such as the Young Women's Christian Association, the Women's Christian Temperance League, the Creche and Kindergarten Association, the Women's Hospital, the Children's Hospital, the National Council of Women, the Queensland Women's Electoral League, etc. And it was one of these organisations, the Brisbane Women's Club, which truly paved the way for the emergence of the QCWA, the largest and most successful women's service club to have emerged in Queensland's history. It all started when the newly arrived governor gave a talk at the Brisbane Women's Club in September 1921 on women in industry. He painted rather a rosy picture of domestic life in the Queensland country, and he also seemed to castigate country women for encouraging their families to migrate to the town. At question time after his speech, May McFarlane and a number of other women spoke in opposition to his rosy view, telling him of the effects of drought and the poor social and physical conditions and amenities for many women in the country. This is a still from the film Moth of Moonbi. This still photo is from the very first motion picture made in Queensland in 1926 by Charles Chauvel. It was based on a book by Queensland author Mabel Forrest, which told the story of the harsh life of a young woman in the Queensland frontier and her yearning to experience life in the city. The governor replied to May and the other women, "If things are as bad as you say they are for country women, then it's up to you, city women, to do something about it. Make it better." May McFarlane recalled that initially the Brisbane Women's Club didn't know how to respond to Sir Matthew's challenge. Then early in the year, in May 1922, word came that the women of the New South Wales had formed a Country Women's Association during the time at their Easter show. Here was their answer. They resolved to hold a conference during the Brisbane exhibition to give the country women of Queensland a platform to articulate their concerns and the opportunity to form a similar organisation. This is the front cover of the program. May was appointed to the organiser of the conference. Lady Forster, the wife of the Governor-General, agreed to open the conference. So May was responsible for sourcing and scheduling a full program of talks and addresses on issues relevant to country women. She wrote to women and societies throughout Queensland, asking them to suggest topics for discussion and, if possible, prepare papers and provide speakers. Inside the program, Lady Forster. This is the inside of the program. I'm not sure that you can see, but I hope you can. As you can see, topics included health, housing, secondary industries, etc. Issues which are still relevant to members today. Publicity was also given and sought and given by two newspapers, the Brisbane Daily Mail and the Queensland Grazier and Farmer. A far cry from today's current social media. The media was an important instrument that the QCWA were quick to use. And believe me, we use it today to its fullest advantage. In an interesting letter written in June 1922 by May to Florence Gordon, the organiser of the New South Wales CWA conference, she explained why there were some men on the program. She wrote, "We are very keen feminists here at Brisbane Women's Club and think that women should have done all the speaking on their own behalf. But when a man knows a certain subject and there is no time to look for a woman, that does. It can't be helped. Times have changed. And indeed, it was a man, that same Sir Matthew Nathan, who had the inspiration to nominate Ruth Fairfax as the first president when it was declared to form a Queensland CWA during the course of the conference. This is going the wrong way, sorry. This is our Ruth Fairfax. Ruth Fairfax. We don't know how or when Sir Matthew met Ruth Fairfax, but he must have been impressed with her abilities, as she was to become the driving force and guiding light for QCWA for the next 10 years. She was born Ruth Beatrice Dowling on the family property in New South Wales in 1878. Her father was the explorer and pastoralist Vincent James Dowling. A bust of him stands outside the Thargomindah Council office and was erected to signify the importance of the contribution he made to the settlement and growth of Thargomindah and the Baloo Shire. Although he too was born in New South Wales, he was an early explorer of the southwest Queensland, mapping river and creek systems, ranges and plains, recording flora and fauna. He established Yulo and Thargomindah stations, and his wife, Ruth's mother, was the first white woman in the Thargomindah area. Like her father, Ruth too became an explorer in country Queensland. We don't know much about Ruth's mother, Frances Dowling, who was born in Sydney and was the youngest daughter of a successful banker and businessman. It must have been a very big cultural shock to go from Sydney to being the only white woman in Thargomindah area. Next is our creed. Ruth was to live by this spiritual creed all her life and embedded it into the QCWA to uphold all the material work and money-making schemes that were inherent to its great work. Ruth was born in 1878 when her parents and older siblings had moved to a pastoral property in New South Wales. Ruth met John Hubert Fairfax, known as Hubert, when he was entering the rural industry upon his return to Australia from study in England. He was one of the third generation of the Fairfax family who had founded the successful Sydney Morning Herald newspaper. He had yearned for country life and had joined the rural farm Dalgety and Company Limited and was mentored by Ruth's father prior to purchasing Dalmore Station near Longreach in 1897. They married in 1899 and she moved to Queensland to live on Dalmore Station. This is Ruth at Dalmore. She described this time at Dalmore as one of commitment, contentment and happiness, of quietness. She spent time on her horses which were mostly bred and broken by her husband and herself. She loved the companionship of the many fine people that were both in the bush in those days, with wonderful fun at gatherings at Longreach and Barcaldine for race weeks, etc. They moved to Marinya in Cambodia near Toowoomba in 1908, and their son Vincent was born in 1909. So this is Ruth teaching Vincent to ride. I can't ride. I have no intention of ever getting on a horse. But her time in Marinya was also the beginning of her public life. She recalled, "I was very active in church work, becoming familiar with the people of the district. I took an interest in everyone and began to feel my heart, my feet in the work of the world." This is an ambulance at Marinya. At the outbreak of the 1914 war, Ruth became president of the Australian Comforts Fund branch in Toowoomba. The work of this organisation continued on after the war to support the injured war veterans. The car outside Marinya with a red cross on it indicates that it was being used for ambulance activities. Patriotic workers at Toowoomba Many of the women whom Ruth worked with in the comforts funds, such as Miss Schofield and Mrs. Wonderly, would join her in her work at the QCWA. After being elected president of the newly formed QCWA on the 11th of August 1922, Ruth and her committee were able to hit the road running. They worked with a surety and speed which grew from their previous community work and helped by the fact that Toowoomba was chosen as the headquarters of the organisation. Ruth at her typewriter. Their first task, due just 1 month later on the 12th of September, was to prepare a draft constitution. This photo of Ruth working at her typewriter at Merinya shows her hard at work on some type of documentation. Branches were already beginning to form, while some existing country women's clubs joined the association fully hatched. For the first conference, 1923, with the governor, the first conference of the association was held in Toowoomba, the 8th and 9th of February 1923, 6 months after the initial meeting in Brisbane. The same office bearers were appointed. All the hard work had paid off. Constitution and rules were also accepted, the aims and objectives were set, and the motto, badge and colours were selected. The photo of the conference shows a large attendance just 6 months after its formation. Slide to be made, text. So from the outset, the Charter of the Queensland Country Women's was to improve welfare and conditions of women and children in the country, to draw together women, girls and children in country districts, to bring opportunities for recreation and enjoyment within the reach of all members, to encourage the active study of local, municipal and state affairs, to promote a wise and kindly spirit, to improve education facilities in the country, and to secure better provision of the safeguarding of public health, especially of children, and more adequate medical and hospital facilities for country districts. After getting the foundation documents organised, Ruth Fairfax and some dedicated friends began to tour by rail and by car to form branches in the northern, central, western and southern divisions, and they roughly followed the rail lines. Visits to southern, central and Queensland northern divisions. The Governor would also promote the formation of the QCWA as he travelled throughout Queensland, and he remained a close advisor to Ruth during this time in Queensland. As his time of Governor drew to a close in 1925, he addressed a QCWA gathering and said, "The association has been vigorous from the outset and now promises to be one of the strongest non-political bodies in the country. I am proud to have been connected with it from the outset. It is interesting to note that Sir Matthew had been involved in the administration of Ireland during the time of the Easter Uprising. He hasn't been to one of my meetings. His experience there had taught him the value of non-political and non-sectarian groups within society. This is some of the pictures from the Northern Division and all of the other divisions. In 1928, there was a garden party at Merinya, and I don't know if any of you are aware, we just recently held a garden party at Merinya. And the people who own the building, who own the property now, very generously gave up their garden for 700 people to trample over. So that's the end of the PowerPoint. I have more to say if you'll allow me. Some of the things the QCWA has advocated for. In the 1930s, a resolution to the state government saw the banning, and these are the words, of the killing of native bears. We call them koalas in those days, and I remember when I first came to Australia, they talked about koala bears. Now they just talk about koalas. In the 1970s, the reason you wear a seatbelt is because QCWA lobbied for that to happen. In the 1980s, we pressed for an increase in pensions to keep pace with the rising cost of living, and we're still doing that today. In the 1990s, patient transport subsidy scheme to increase travel costs. You people in the city, you don't realise how lucky you are that you can get on a bus or a train and your hospital is just down the road. We don't have that luxury. And it's a cost that can be hundreds of dollars. And today, we continue to advocate all levels of government to reopen maternity services across the state. No mother should be expected to give birth to her baby on the side of the road. Do you imagine your wives having to do that? I don't think so. Seatbelts in school buses. This is we're bringing this forward again at our next state conference. You don't have to wear a seatbelt when you get on a bus. I travel from Dalby to Brisbane every week on a coach. We don't have trains. And I don't drive. And because I don't drive, the Queensland roads are safer. So when I get on the bus, there's an announcement comes over telling me that I have to wear a seatbelt. Nobody comes to make sure that I've got a seatbelt on. It's not like on the plane where they come and check you put your seatbelt on. So we're advocating for that. Some of the other things we do, we have what's called our Public Rural Crisis Fund. That fund to date has distributed more than $11.5 million to families in times of stress. That fund is a donation. It comes under what do they call it? A gift. You can go onto the QCWA website. You can hit donate. It's tax deductible. That fund, we take no administration costs out of that fund. Every dollar we receive is every dollar we spend. And it might be to a drought-stricken farmer. It might be to somebody who's lost their house in a flood. It might just be to pay the dentist bill that they can't afford to pay. So we rely on your donations for that. Just recently, at the end of May, my Northern Region State Vice President and I went to Mount Isa, Gregory, Burketown, Hammerwheel, after the disastrous floods. And we handed out $40,285 from our disaster fund. Our disaster fund is something that our branches and members donate to. And that's there for, it's there for that sort of thing. It was absolutely heartbreaking to hear some of the stories. And if you'll allow me, I will share some with you. We met a young lady. Her whole livelihood had been washed away. They had a roadhouse. When they went back after the water had gone down, there were rocks. There were just rocks there. When we said, what can we do to help? She said, the children have lost their swing set. I need a swing set. We were able to provide her with Kmart vouchers. We looked it up online. We found out what was the most expensive swing set and we gave her enough vouchers to cover that. When we went to Camberwell, which is a highly populated Indigenous. It's only a small community, but it's majority of the people there are Indigenous. They lost their houses, and there were only 3 houses in the whole town where they could live, where they could stay. So you can imagine the people that had that house, it might have been Nana and 3 children and 6 grandchildren, suddenly became the home for her sister's children and everybody's children. So that's what we did. QCWA members, well, we're there wherever help is needed, whether it be providing meals for essential workers, providing toiletries for women and children in crisis. Branches currently are running breakfast clubs at school because children go to school without breakfast. I don't know whether that's because of the financial situation the parents are in or whether it's just the parents don't. I don't know. So that's what we do. We're there. We feed. If there's a crisis in a town, we're there. We feed the workers. We feed the ambulance drivers. We feed the SES. And you know, we do get some bonuses back because in recognition of these achievements, the Queensland Country Women's Association was inducted into the Queensland Business Wall of Fame in 2013. And in 2019 received a Queensland Great Award for empowering and inspiring women across the state. We are so much more than just tea and scones. Thank you.
Well, we have time, of course, for
if there's questions,
discussions,
I will do my best.
As is our tradition, if you are making a point or asking a question, would you just introduce yourself by name to the audience? So,
we do. We still say. Can I also add that originally our creed did not say honour to God and loyalty to the throne. It did say honour to God, but the loyalty to the throne was only introduced in the 1940s during the war. And I'll be quite honest here, we are currently having a discussion about our creed and how we deal with it. It's a living thing. You know, my advice to members is, if you don't want to say the creed, you don't have to say it. But there is so much beauty in it. No, she didn't. So we have the motto, which is honour to God, loyalty to the throne, service to the country through country women, for country women, by country women. But we do also have our creed, which is a whole different thing. And it was written by Howard Arnold Waters. And it was actually a letter to his mother. He was a minister in Canada, and he was away from his family, from his mother. And what he wrote eventuated to our creed, which we do sometimes sing, we sometimes don't, but it's always there. It's always at the start of every meeting.
I wrote down a phrase from that. I would be brave, for there is much to be.
That's right.
It's such a moving phrase.
It is. It means a lot to a lot of people. I would look up and laugh and love and lift. That's a beautiful.
I'm involved in a couple of
Okay. Okay.
deal.
So our current constitution is dated 2015. At our 2022 conference, a new constitution was put forward, but it was voted down by the members. I currently have a working party working on a new constitution. There is such a lot in the constitution that has to be there. But like a lot of organisation, there was also a lot in the constitution that is bylaws, is the procedures. They don't need to be in constitutions. Constitutions really are a living document. So as I say, I have a group of ladies who are tearing their hair out. It won't happen this year. It might not happen next year, but they will come up with a new constitution. I don't envy your organisation that's trying to do it.
There are nods from nearly
I
everybody.
think so. You would have the same. You would have a constitution that you have to adhere to. Yes. Okay. We have a time frame. We do have a time frame. My time frame as state vice president is a 2-year term. I was elected late in 2021 due to COVID, so that term was only 18 months. I'm partway through my second term, and that will expire at that conference in 2025. It is, Ros. It is part of it. We have. This is the way you do it. You know, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And believe me, Ros will tell you, if I stand up, even as a branch member, and make a mistake, there's always somebody there will say, that's not the correct way to do it. That's not protocol. This is the way you do it. But it works. We've been around 100 years. We must have done something right. Yet we do know how to run meetings. We do. Melanie? Thank you.
And the other one came up. Notice they get and to pass on the one of those was forward.
Mm-hmm.
Into the plane. And so that will be live on the in a few months. So that's
Lovely. Thank you.
It's in front of But one thing I'd also like to share is that value connection. I interviewed a number of
I didn't know about that hospital.
Okay.
I have a book.
There you are. Here's a book to sell you.
I have many copies.
Madam Malalou gave us.
She died in that hospital. just like to say for you.
Does. It's, you know, when the association was formed, we had a number of objectives and I read those out. Whilst the language surrounding those objectives might have changed, the intent hasn't. We're still there to serve women and children. I did omit to tell you that when I checked the numbers yesterday, we have 4,263 members across the state. That's divided, we're divided into divisions. We have 20 divisions and we have 225 branches. Last year we had a new branch formed near Emerald. So we're there, we're vibrant. Some of us are getting older, but we're getting younger women. I would encourage any of you with daughters, granddaughters, to join the association. We have branches right throughout Brisbane. You don't have to. Somebody said to me, why do we call ourselves country women? Well, some people's interpretation of country is over the other side of the downs, the other side of the range. But to me, Australia is the country. It's the whole embodiment of the country. It doesn't matter that I live on the other side of the Toowoomba Range. Politicians don't know we're there, let me point out. I have great trouble with politicians realising that there is a world the other side of, well, probably Ipswich actually. But no, you know, as I say, we have so many branches in city areas and we are growing and we do provide a service. So, thank you.
We were touched by your problems. I will remember as the only doctor in Catherine in the Northern horse breaker, breaking in a horse and the horse fell on him. The door off 44 hours. Often had our problems.
Yeah, they're minuscule, but they are, you know,
It's part of life, isn't it?
we're constantly lobbying the government to improve health services. You know, because somebody has cancer, they should not have to leave their small country town. My little town, I'm very fortunate. We have a hospital. We have one bed set aside for palliative care. So that person can get some care, but if they've got to go for chemo and those things, they have to go to Toowoomba or Brisbane, or if they're in northern, it's Cairns or Townsville. You shouldn't have to travel from Longreach to Brisbane for cancer treatment. It should be there. The government seems to spend an awful lot of money on things that aren't necessary. They need to come and look and see what people need. What we all need is services that are there, ready, available. And that's what we do. We lobby government. We're currently, at our last conference, there was a white paper put forward from a group of ladies in the Umundi branch, which is on the Sunshine Coast. We're following that through at the moment, and we're going to launch a new project at our conference. And it's to deal with women in that age. Probably, if you're in your 70s, you probably aren't encompassed in this project, because you know that if you're renting your house, you really are only one rent rise away from being evicted. But women today, because women don't get equal pay, a lot of women don't have superannuation. We don't, you know, there's people like that. People are only one way away from disaster, one step away from disaster. So at our conference in October, we will be launching this new project, which we hope the government will listen to us.
Strength to your advocacy and advocates. and ambassadorial outreach. Touched on their hearts today. Also, with this one. It's a pleasure on behalf of us all to invite Ros Lauder, a former councillor of our society, and herself, representative of the CWA, to, on all our behalf, just to say a few words.
My great pleasure, Sheila, on behalf of the RHSQ, and the fact that I was immaculately trained in road suspense at many the CWA meetings, roughly around voted. Sheila is our 31st state president, and like all QCWA presidents, really high. Thank you, Sheila, for your wonderful presentation, and please accept this as a token of our thank you.
Thank you. Another pen.
Well,
I put a pen down and somebody else always takes it.
well, then you'll know it's yours.
I know it's mine. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You could delve in that. Yeah, we don't.
Always introducing us to each other.
Main goal is that's what you print and how not bring the two together. Yes. Yes. Well, that should be like 15.
No, it was
Oh, Constance, 3%, 10-year-old.
they tried to get bullying into
Matthew, we're meeting up tomorrow night.
Yes.
Would you?
Yes.
I remember reading it.
Yes. Twice.